Amanda Owen, Yorkshire Shepherdess. Here we are in the beautiful Yorkshire outdoors, star of Our Yorkshire Farm. To take me right back, how did it all start in Yorkshire?
It all began in Yorkshire, it all began in Huddersfield and with a dream. It began with James Herriot, it began with reading books, and basically I find myself living now at one of the highest remotest hill farms in Yorkshire.
And how did you get to become a shepherdess?
I always lay the blame at James Herriot's door. James Herriot, for me, reading those books, watching the television, that television programme, All Creatures Great and Small, the people, the outdoors, the countryside, living in Huddersfield. It was very urban. I was in the town, but out of my window I could see the moors, I could see the hills, and that is where I wanted to go.
And tell me about your home in Ravensseat.
What can I say? Ravensseat is a very busy place. It's a place of contrast, I suppose. It's a remote place, but it's a place of happiness. It's a place that's full of children, full of life, and of course I feel like we've shared it with a whole lot of people all over the world.
And you've got your 9 children, so how do they love the farm? What do they get up to?
The 9 children, I mean, I would say they're supposed to free range. They're very outdoorsy. They've got horses, they've got cows, sheep, you name it. It's all going on. We're a very busy household. It's a good life. It has its moments. There's never a dull moment in our house.
And how did Our Yorkshire Farm come about?
It's been slow baby steps. It all began quite a few years ago with regional television and being a bit part at the beginning of the documentary style programmes. There was Dale's Diary, then of course there was the Fly on the Wall documentary with Ade Edmondson, the Dales, and from there the opportunity to write, do books, and people realised there was an interest in the countryside and the outdoors, this wonderful county and everything that we've got on the doorstep. So that is how it came about. And you know, I've always been someone who looks for opportunities. The opportunity came along and I took it.
And explain to me a little bit about the sort of year of 2 halves at Ravensseat.
The year of 2 halves is something quite distinct in my life. I have 6 months of being with the sheep. From tupping time in late autumn right through to lambing time, it is all about the sheep. That is the focus. It is about getting them in lamb, foddering them and tending to them throughout the winter months. Then lambing time, then of course they head back to the moors, back to their freedoms, I guess what they enjoy, and it gives me a chance to morph into the other part of my life, my farm diversification, whereby it's all about walkers, the general public, and people coming through the farm.
And lockdown, we've just come out of lockdown. How was lockdown for you? Tell me about the kind of difficult parts, but then again the sort of good parts of lockdown.
Well, this year has been a very strange year, of course, with lockdown. I've very much missed the people coming back. I mean, even though we live remotely and I suppose as isolated as it gets, I've really felt there's been what can I say, a sort of feeling in the air that things weren't right. During lambing time, everything continued as normal because of course your focus is then entirely upon the sheep. But once we're past lambing time and into May, that's usually when the tourists, the visitors come back, and of course they didn't this year. So it's presented its own kind of problems and issues. Of course, having 9 children at home was one of the first ones, and how much they actually consume. I would be having an absolute panic attack every time I heard the fridge door go. But you know, we've kind of got ourselves into the rhythm of it. We're battling all the same things that we would usually be battling: the elements, the rain, the sunshine, you name it. That is what we are good at. Being from Yorkshire, being farmers, we can turn his hand to anything. So we're fortunate that we did have the space, which meant that life could pretty much carry on as normal. But yeah, I can't wait for some sort of normality to return.
And you've witnessed a lot of really special things, haven't you, over the last few months, being at home so much with the family, you know, the nature and the big skies, and tell me a little bit about that.
Always. I think this year, perhaps more than any year, there was this little part of me that kind of, I suppose, lost track of time. I think that happened for a lot of people, really, whereby you wouldn't actually know what day it was or what time it was. It was like either light o'clock or dark o'clock, it didn't matter, because certain constraints were lifted, I suppose. You know, the children weren't going to school. I suppose we took more notice of what was going on in our surroundings, where usually I would be very busy running backwards and forwards between turning over the facilities for the guests and all the rest of it. It was like, actually, I now have time. So we saw all kinds of things. The skies were quiet, so we saw stars and constellations that we weren't familiar with. We watched birds hatching, curlews, all kinds of things that usually wouldn't have, you know, we knew they were there, we knew they were happening, but we wouldn't have, I suppose, focused on to that degree. But it was kind of like the gift that coronavirus gave us was maybe a bit more time, I suppose.
So when you're away from Raven Seat, enjoying the great outdoors in Yorkshire, where do you like to go?
I do occasionally have a day out, but I usually combine it with work. Recently I had to go to York because Raven's at university there, and I thought York was a lovely, lovely, lovely city. That was wonderful. The seaside as well, I suppose. Quite like swimming. I've got a bit of a liking for the old outdoor swimming. So places like Whitby.
So anyone who wants to come and visit Yorkshire, what would you say to them about what a brilliant place Yorkshire is?
When it comes to visiting Yorkshire, I think it is a place that ticks so many boxes. It's got everything. It's got your metropolitan, busy, it's got your cities, it's got your open spaces. Those are the places that I like, the places where your phone doesn't work, the places where you can get what we call a headspace, but just enjoying the outdoors. I love Yorkshire for what it is. You know, it's everything to me. You know, I've lived in both parts of Yorkshire, and I really can't say that I have a favourite at all.
So Amanda, you live in this beautiful isolated place in Yorkshire, but actually you're seen across the globe. Tell me about that.
I always think that, as I started with, Yorkshire is a place of contrast. So living where I do, one of the highest, most remotest farms in Yorkshire, but yet I feel like I've gone global, but without going anywhere. I feel like people have just fallen in love with I suppose the scenery, the views, the big skies. Of course, where we farm, it's very heathery, it's Wuthering Heights. It's the scenery that kind of makes you want to sort of take a deep breath. That is what people like. The children, the animals. It's just, I say, I feel like it's a real honour that people are so interested. I get messages from all over the world, where people have seen us on the television and want to know where this place is. Because, I mean, it's a special place for me, obviously, but, I mean, who'd have thought? You couldn't make it up, really, could you? You couldn't make it up that this tiny little place on the very cusp, with other counties that we don't mention, should have gone so far. It's very strange, but I think that kind of sums up Yorkshire as well. It's a place of, you expect the unexpected. You come down over the cattle grid and you see this view, and you look at the view and it's pretty much unchanged. It's the view that I used to see in my mind's eye when I watched those All Creatures Great and Small episodes. And of course a lot of those episodes were filmed up Swaledale because the scenery hadn't changed, so it fitted. So can you imagine, my life feels like it's done full circle. I am there now, living it. For me it was my dream. That was what I dreamed of. And I'm really fortunate that I somehow ended up with my dream becoming a reality. And for a lot of people, their ideas and dreams of where they want to go in life and what they want to do with life are exactly the same as mine. Slow things down a bit, quit the rat race and spend some time in the countryside. So it's a very simple idea, and it's an achievable one. It's an achievable idea. The people watching the programme, the people sitting at home, they can see this beautiful place on the television, but it's accessible. They can get there, they can get on the train, they can get in a car, they can make it here. It's not the Galapagos Islands, is it?
And I suppose it's really accessible through your social media reach as well.
Yes, the social media thing, that was all very accidental. Literally, because I'm always really busy, not surprisingly, because I've got my fingers in a lot of pies, a lot of things to do, meant that basically I didn't have the time to write so much about it. And sometimes a picture can tell 1,000 words. So I would put a picture up on social media. That was where it all started. It was about 6 years ago. I had a following of 992 followers, and that's when I went to London and very proudly announced this and set off to write my first book, and now I think it's just over 100,000. And I mean, it's just a visual representation of what's going on the farm. So anything and everything. But if you combine the elements of course, the weather, the scenery, children, animals, all the things that you're not supposed to work with basically, and shove them all together, then you're bound to get a picture.
And how far away, you know, have people sort of interacted with you on social media?
Oh, I literally, there are messages coming in from all over the world. You know, I believe the programme is out at the moment in New Zealand. So it doesn't get further than that, I don't think.
So we watch you every week, and there's Clive and there's your 9 children.
Yes.
Tell me about your romantic meeting with Clive.
The romantic meeting with Clive that never was. Yes, it was 1996. I was a shepherd, I was a freelance shepherd. I was working on a dairy farm over in Cumbria, and the farmer had a small flock of Swaledale sheep, and he would borrow a ram every year off his friend who was called Clive. And one evening after milking, he gave me instructions and directions as to where I had to go and get this tup. So I drove, and I drove, and I drove, and I drove, and I didn't know where I was going, but literally I was coming back. It was a homecoming in a roundabout way, because I drove over that border, back into Yorkshire, back onto my home turf, and basically drove, it's about 10 miles of nothing, through the heather, across the moor on a single track road, and then came down, drove across a ford, that was like Harriet too, through the water splash and up into the yard, and it was really dark. So I never got a right good look at Clive, but I got a good look at the tup, and he was fine, and we loaded him into the trailer, and I had a cup of tea, and that was it. And then I was off away again, back to civilization. About a week afterwards, the phone rang, and it was Clive ringing to find out if I wanted to meet up again. Well, I ignored him, not having any of that, not interested. And then, cunning this, he left a message, and it said, "Amanda, I've been to the moor and I've gathered my sheep in it, and my favourite yow's coming with a broken leg, and I can't possibly hold her still and set the leg at the same time." Well, he reeled me in like you would not believe. That was it. I was there, and it was the start of a beautiful relationship, and 4 years later we got married, and then 20 years later we've got 9 children.
Wow.
If he could have seen in a crystal ball, he so would not have done that, would he? Can you imagine?
And if you look in your crystal ball, can you see sort of double figures for the kids?
Oh, I don't know. You must bear in mind that there never was a plan. There was never any family planning, certainly, but there never has been a plan. And I think that is probably what has brought us to where we're at now. Because you know, the best laid plans and all that, we know what happens to them. So we just go with the flow, take whatever comes our way, and just, I suppose, count our blessings.
So what have we got, you know, lined up regarding more books, more filming?
Oh yes, there's always something lined up with me. Never a dull moment. So, we are filming, and I'm also, in my spare time, don't laugh, writing again. I haven't put my pen away just yet. So yeah, book number 4.
Well, Amanda Owen, thank you very much. We'll look forward to more adventures on the farm with you.
Thank you very much.